Thematic schematics, mind passages, active, climactic rhyme patterns, divine facets shine in the blackness, third eye aligned with the atlas, master the madness, blurred signs and immaculate passages, like kids lacking a master, galactic vastness, I write the whiz as oracular pastures, I'm the gladdest of bastards when I rap mathematical data on this astral ladder, this had to be fathomed by Her Majesty's atoms, I grasp the tree of Adam, freeze the blasphemous as I free the magic from the breezes passing, the degrees you're grasping, decease your past ghastly, I breathe till I pass speech, past the vast regions you never asked or believed in, past the last season, brass tacks on a fractal gleaming on my room's wall, a Buddhic tattoo of a god, truly the past rulers were the most modest, coast on lost oceans, farther than moss rolling on rocks golden, in forgotten solar systems, drop these nodes that glisten, soul focused in bars that grow lotuses and bardos unholy, where roses won't open from the scars on their chalices, I'm a Martian warrior, the bars, the walkway to palaces ominous, where the malice of dominant species, conquered with beastly confidence, I speak in compliments, seek the meekness of continents of ETs walking with priestly garments, teach peace and Greek beings with gleaming ornaments sacred, conjure up mages that cross the darkness in awesome spaceships, rocks with thoughts ageless, spark blazes that enlighten priceless ciphers, my likeness is likened to light blurred, for you cannot truly see my brightness when I write words and recite them with purpose, slice the unrighteous with verses, splice and rebirth them as the brightest of earthlings, I am the earth's worst thing that the heavens are cursing, yet I am also the best, and I am excessively searching, in the breath of the breaths my words sing, till I find an answer to my mind's cancer, I bind with random lines needed, till they align with divine beings, and redesign my sign meanings, and redesign my sign meanings.
Righteousness. All right, today I'm just going to be reading out of the 7th Circle Koran. This is one of my favorite chapters. This is probably one of my favorite reads. I wouldn't say one of my favorite. I would say this is a good read. Noble Drew Ali had a lot of good teachings. Eliyahu's Lessons, The Unity of Life is the title of the 3rd chapter. Again, Eliyahu met his pupils in the sacred grove and said, no man live unto himself, for every living thing is bound by cords to every other living thing. Now, this principle right here is telling you that everything is one. Okay, nothing lives unto itself. If we just look at the body, for instance, my thumb does not live according to itself and does what it wants to do, but it is bound by every other thing on my body. Okay, this thumb is bound to my heart, which is bound to my kneecap, and everything is one whole. Okay, just imagine if my thumb was greedy and wanted to take all the nutrients in my body, how it couldn't survive. It would kill itself. And this is the same thing humans don't understand in life, that our greed kills off other things in the body of the earth and in the body of the universe. But that's a principle to be understood in everybody in their own time. Verse 3, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will love and not demand love in return. They will not do to other men what they would not have other men do unto them. Now, again, this is another key verse, because in the so-called conscious community, which I would call the black conscious community, you have people that tend to hate a certain race, okay, and do to men what they wouldn't want done to them. They complain that these type of people have done this to us, but then turn around and do the same thing to them. That shows me a lack of understanding right there, and then that growth still needs to go on, and we all have growth to attain to. Verse 5, there are two selves, the higher and lower self. And again, these are just concepts. There's only one self, but the higher and lower self is breaking down concepts for you to understand. The higher self is the human spirit clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah, or the Creator. The lower self, the carnal self, the body of desires, is a reflection of the higher self, distorted by the murky waters, the murky ethers of flesh. That right there is a good quote. The higher self is the spirit in a man. And the lower self is our animal desires, our lust, our flesh. Like people tend to say the lust of the flesh is bad. Well, the lust of the flesh has been built into us, a lot of it. For instance, sex is built into us when we hit puberty. We start to lust after women in order to procreate the species. But what happens is it turns, it's just our animal nature, because all animals have this instinct within them. But we're not just animals, we also have the divine in us. But we tend to let the animal nature control the divine. And that's where the problem comes in. So when you have sexual lust, you don't know how to control it. You just let the flesh control the spirit. And there was an interesting read in this book, and I probably can't find it at this time, but it was another book I was reading that just told you that most people are ignorant that their spirit is tainted with different things, lust, desires, and this. And until you clear the taints, you can never be in true experience of the Creator, because you have all these taints, these lust, desires that you have not got under control. So let me continue. Verse 8, the lower self is an illusion and will pass away. The higher self is Allah in man and will not pass away. And this is a concept, especially in the Hindu religion, that the Atman is a spirit or is the Creator that is within you, okay, which is the higher self. And the flesh always passes away. Our flesh must be consumed by the earth, just as we consume flesh on our plates. Okay? Just as that flesh you consumed on a plate, you consume it, the earth will consume you that same way, because what goes around comes around. But we just don't, even when we so-called pray over our food, we don't even realize that. We don't even thank the Creator and thank that food for giving us nutrition, because that food is alive just like you. But our consciousness just ain't on that level yet. Where am I? Verse 8. Verse 9, excuse me. The higher self is the embodiment of truth. The lower self is truth reversed, and so is falsehood manifest. The higher self is justice, mercy, love, and right. The lower self is what the higher self is not. The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. The higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life. The lower self is rich in promises, but poor in blessedness and peace. It offers pleasure, joy, and satisfying gain, but gives unrest and misery and death. It gives men apples that are lovely to the eye and pleasant to the smell. Their cores are full of bitterness and gall. I'm going to hop down to verse 15. He who knows well his lower self knows the illusions of this world. And I wouldn't call them illusions. I would just call them, when you're going to master these things. But let me finish this. Knows the illusions of the world, knows of the things that pass away. He knows his higher self and knows Allah, knows well the things that cannot pass away. Well, I would have to tend to agree with him here by illusions. Because, for instance, this body is an illusion. This body is like a mirage. When you're out in the desert, right, and somebody who's haven't had a drink for 2 days and sees off in the distance something watery, right, although it's just the heat off the surface of the ground, to him it looks like water. But after a while, when he walks up to it, it's gone. And it's just like these bodies. We fall in love with these bodies, our kids, our wife, these bodies, and also the spirits, or the souls, should I say. But these things are illusions too, because they're there one minute and the next minute they're gone. Okay, they're illusions, but we get attached like they're going to be here forever. And that's an illusion within itself that you have to train yourself on. Okay, and even our lower selves, the things of our body, our desires, are things that must be mastered. Okay, in order to even attain peace, love, joy, righteousness. Let me go ahead and finish this chapter. I'm going to just read verse 21 to end this. It says, the only devil from which men must be redeemed is self, the lower self. If man will find his devil, he must look within. His name is self. Okay? His name is self. Because a lot of us, you will never reach the point of being like Christ. Or as Noble Drew Ali says, like Allah, if you have not mastered the self. And once you have mastered the self, you will have to know how to use your instruments for righteousness. Okay, but this chapter breaks down very good principles. Elihu's lessons, the unity of life. Even the higher and lower self are a unity, but in there he just giving you concepts of division. The spirit and the flesh are all one. It's just this flesh isn't against you. It's just how do you use the spirit to control the flesh? We let our flesh, our lust for self-procreation, control us and talk us into doing stuff. Okay, but there are lessons in mathematics on how to control it. And those who will seek will find those things. Okay, it's not good to always give lessons out over the internet because, again, like my master has said, you wouldn't want to cast your pearls before a swan. Because everybody who's listening, you could use these principles for good or for evil. What is being taught in order to control your flesh can be used for good or for evil, because it's a principle that is not good or evil. It's a principle of mastering the self. But you can master the self to use your self for bad deeds. So that chapter right there, Elihu's Lessons, chapter 3 in the 7th Circle Quran, that's a good teaching to let people know this, because this is the fight. This is the journey. This is the fight to the kingdom. A lot of people will teach a kingdom is outward. Well, you can never, for instance, if I'm trying to plant a rose bush, or let me think of a flower. What's a flower? If I'm trying to produce any kind of flower, let's say a sunflower. If I want to manifest a sunflower outwardly, I have to plant the seed in the ground. If it's any other seed other than a sunflower, it will not produce a sunflower. So in order to produce an outward kingdom of peace, joy, and righteousness, you have to plant a righteous kingdom seed. And that seed is within the souls, the minds, the hearts of men. Until you can transform that, there will be no outward kingdom. And you can live in the kingdom right now. This is proven. But today's lesson was just on Elihu's lessons. The Noble Drew Ali has some great teachings. I have read most of this book. And there are some great teachings in here. I cannot deny that. Just like I have read in most every walk, or I wouldn't say most every, but I have read from Roman literature. Roman, should I say, wise men. They have good literature. The Easterners have good literature. The Asians, the Indians, Africans, Egyptians, and even some of the Westerners. So, meditate on these precepts. Meditate. If you don't meditate, you'll never get there. It's good to regurgitate stuff you heard, and hey, I know what the higher self, lower self is. But if you're not putting anything into practice on how to master them, and that's a whole nother topic. But if you're not putting anything into practice, you're just regurgitating theories, and you haven't even walked. It's like a man who is in a forest and got a roadmap to get out the forest, but all you're doing is reading a map, and you're not actually taking the walk to get out of the forest. You're just regurgitating what the map says. So with that, Eliyahu's lessons, man. Meditate on it. Peace.
One of the things you said in your talks is about, and you were just saying earlier about the Earth, planet Earth, our Mother Earth is not the same as the environment. And you said we need to go beyond environmentalism and beyond just having environmental activists. Can you just tell us a bit about what you mean by that?
If you are only you, and I am only me, and we are two different entities, how can communication is possible? So when you wake up and you see that the earth is not just the environment, the earth is in you, you are the earth. You touch the nature of interbeing. At that moment, you can have real communication with the earth. That is the highest form of prayer. The one who pray, the one who is prayed to, are not two. So in that kind of relationship, we have enough love, strength, awakening in order to change our life. Changing is not just changing the things outside of us. First of all, we have to get right view. Right view is kind of view that transcends all notions, including the notion of being and non-being.